Ladies and gentlemen, I believe there is no ethical justification for suicide. Suicide goes against the ethical principle of justice. Resources are scarce and must be distributed fairly. If one were to end their life, resources would be used to deal with the consequences of a premature death. It could simply be disposing of the corpse, yet it could also extend to further, for example, consoling those who have already been emotionally affected. Time and resources, which could have been used elsewhere, would need to be diverted to deal with the negative externalities of a self-imposed action. Suicide also goes against the ethical principle of autonomy. John Stuart Mill argued that for true freedom of choice, one cannot limit their own future choices. For example, selling oneself into slavery limits your future autonomy and choice. This house argues the same for suicide. By killing oneself, your future autonomy is limited and therefore makes suicide unethical. We must also be aware of the limits of autonomy, some of which I will outline here. In an ideal model of autonomy, personal values would be independently derived. However, as we progress through life, we are influenced in many ways, leading to the conclusion that autonomy is not independently derived. Furthermore, when deciding on suicide, ambivalence and conflict occurs. Therefore, the final decision is ultimately influenced by the thoughts most prominent at the time and not our firmly held beliefs. Personal autonomy is further weakened when other factors are present, such as mental or physical illness, and finally it would be fair to argue that the person would want to live if things were different, but this is not an option. Therefore, lack of options limits autonomy. So when we argue that we need to respect autonomy, we also need to be aware of the limits of autonomy in any situation, but even more so when contemplating taking one's own life. My final argument focuses on a deontological argument, that there is an inherent value and worth to life itself. When we commit suicide, we devalue that life by seeing life as a means to an end, as opposed to an end in itself. We would not, for example, use another person as a means to happiness, and it would be seen as devaluing of their life if we were to discard them if they did not fulfill this role. It is therefore immoral to do the same to ourselves, to discard our own life when it no longer appears to bring us happiness. Ladies and gentlemen, suicide goes against the ethical principle of justice and autonomy, and it is immoral as it devalues life itself. I urge you to vote for this motion.